Okay. Please start the event. It is not.
I
It is
did.
not letting
Also,
me
there
join.
there are people in now.
Okay, we have
Oh,
people in
okay.
here.
Yes. Oh, we're so excited to be here with you guys. We're waiting on a couple of
Awesome.
people.
Let's see. I think as soon as we see Logan added.
And we can.
Oh, we can promote to panelist. Awesome. Okay.
Perfect.
Good to see you all in here.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. We're so excited
Oh,
to
here we
talk
go.
with you. Oh, there's Logan.
Logan, promote to panelist. Awesome. Here we go.
All right. Sorry about that delay.
No problem.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for coming. My name is Logan Reed. I'm an assistant dean of admission at William & Mary, and these are all wonderful Monroe panelists. So thank you all so much for joining us and answering and taking time out of your day to answer questions from prospective William & Mary Monroe students. And if you each of you want to go around and just introduce yourself, maybe talk about your meaningful involvement and major and where you're coming from, that'd be perfect to get us started.
Sure, I can go ahead and start. My name is Holly. I'm a junior at the college, neuroscience major. Some of my meaningful involvements on campus, I'm in 2 a cappella groups on campus, so super involved in the a cappella community. I also have done a little bit of research, dabbled here and there, and I work part-time as a peer scholarship advisor in the Charles Center.
I'm Mary. I'm a senior and I'm from the DC area and I'm studying economics and government. I, like Holly, am involved in a cappella and I also do some kind of private music lessons. So I do jazz drumming and jazz voice. I also do some work with Office Community Engagement, so some service work on campus. And I'm also involved with freshman orientation.
And I'll round it out. I'm Caroline. I'm a senior this year. I'm in international relations and data science double major. Meaningful involvements on the campus. I was on the crew team in pre-COVID times, so club sports. And then I have also done some various research projects in the IR department. And I'm an RA on campus. So I'm actually living in our freshman residence halls. So I can talk to you guys a little bit about that if you're curious.
Great. So if you all want to, we can kind of get started with what each of you all kind of maybe going over your why William & Mary story. Why did you choose William & Mary? And then during that, if all the attendees, if you want to go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A section, that'd be perfect. And then we'll try and get to as many of y'all's questions as possible.
I can go first for why William & Mary. So for me, I went to a pretty small high school. I'm from a pretty rural area. And so I knew that I didn't want a huge school and I wanted a place where I knew people on campus and that I ran into people that I knew. And that's something I can say that happens all the time. I also really liked the opportunity to do research, and something that they talked about was how the relationships between students and their professors at William & Mary is so unique. And I can absolutely agree with that. I'm very close with a lot of my professors. And that's something that I think has really shaped my college experience in a way that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Yeah, like Caroline, I think kind of the main thing I was looking for in a college was just a really supportive environment. And I wanted that kind of on every level. You know, I wanted to feel supported by my professors, and I also wanted to feel supported by my peers, and just feel supported by, you know, the institutions and kind of the structure and scaffolding at the school. And I have really just felt that and so much more. It feels like in every part of my life, you know, in the classroom, I really feel like my professors want me to succeed. I feel like with my classmates, it's super, super collaborative, which is just awesome. And I know that, you know, if I want to study for an exam with somebody or just generally when I go into the classroom, it's a very collaborative and warm space. And I just feel really supported here.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Mary and Caroline have already said. But I am also from Northern Virginia, so I was looking in state when I was trying to decide where to go. And there were just like a lot of things that drew me toward William & Mary. I really like the size of it. I think it's like kind of like the perfect medium, like a Goldilocks situation. It's like it's not too small but not too big, and like it's not like a party school, but there's still like a lot of fun stuff to do on campus. And also the ability to do undergraduate research was big pull. And then also there's a lot of support for study abroad, which is something that unfortunately I didn't get to do just because of the way that everything turned out. But I was really interested in doing that as well. And yeah, just the community. Like I came and I toured the school. It's such a beautiful campus and just like so friendly. Like, and it's cool that that's like the first impression I got just from the tour, and then that's been totally true in my time here as well. Yeah.
And adding on,
Yeah, go ahead, Mary. I have something to add too.
adding on one thing to that. So I remember when I was touring, once I got admitted to schools and I was going back and visiting, the one thing I kept saying was, well, William & Mary just feels really happy. And I wasn't sure if it's because when I revisited, it was a sunny day and everyone was outside playing Frisbee, but I kind of went with it. And that has been kind of my main takeaway. When I talk about college and when I talk about my 4 years here, it's just a happy place. And I feel like I've just been so lucky to get to go to a campus that is just a genuinely happy place. And you can't help but just feel grateful when you're here.
Also elaborating on my tour experience, something that I loved. So my tour was not a beautiful day. It was raining and very cold. But something that I loved, that kind of goes back to like people are pretty happy here, is that I saw so many students wearing William & Mary gear when I was touring, like so many that I noticed it and was like, oh, these people really like their school. Like they love to represent where they come from. And so that was something that was really attractive to me, was that like so many people, like enough people were wearing William & Mary gear that I noticed it on my tour.
Awesome. I love it. So we've got one question. Have you used any of your grant money? And if so, how did you use it?
Yeah, so I did freshman Monroe research. And I came into college knowing that I wanted to do research and not really sure what I wanted to do it in. And so my freshman year, I talked to all of my professors about, well, what would it look like if I used my grant money in your department? And basically, so how the freshman Monroe grant money works is, or how the Monroe grant money works is after your freshman year, there's a stipend that you can use to do research that kind of builds on a class you took freshman year. And then after your sophomore, junior year, the research can be broader, really whatever you're interested in. So I was in an education policy class that was actually over at the School of Education. And I loved the class. I wanted to do research on it. So I went to my professor and he was just so wonderful. And he helped me through, all of the steps. And I had to get certified so I could do interviews. And he helped me, with all the paperwork. And then when I started the research over the summer, he was just there every step of the way. And it was a really valuable experience being able to do that research as a freshman, which is crazy. And then learning, how to write up the paper and then how to present later in the next semester.
Yeah, so like Mary, I also did a first year Monroe summer research grant. So the first year one is $1,000 for 3 weeks of full-time research over the summer. And that's the summer after your freshman year. And then the summer after your sophomore or your junior year, you can apply for the upper class Monroe summer research grant, which is $3,000 for 7 weeks of full-time research. So the project that I did for my freshman year or my first year summer research grant was just like an independent like study. So it was just like me, it was all online too. It's just me like doing a lot of research on my own and like writing a paper about it. And it's just a really great way to like dip your toe into the research pool, especially if you don't have any experience, because like that funding is allotted just for Monroe scholars to be conducting research over the summer. So there's a lot of support in that way for you to get funded. And it is such a broad array of what you could do, like Mary was saying, in terms of what kind of research you could conduct, anything that you're interested in, really.
So I actually didn't use my Monroe funding research. And I think that if I was going to go back and do something differently, I would have. But at the time when I was making those decisions, I was involved in other research groups on campus that kind of were taking up enough of my time that I kind of found a balance there and decided not to do it. But I have heard of so many awesome projects that people have done. So you can, like the two other panelists said, there's so much flexibility in how you use it.
Yeah, we've got some other questions. So how many Monroe scholars are in the freshman class? Well, I mean, part of it depends on how many people accept. So we it fluctuates. I don't know of any particular set number. I know it's about 10% of students get the Monroe Scholarship. So you could always do the math on that. But it just depends and fluctuates each year. So I mean, I don't know if any of you all know any particular numbers, but that's as far as I know. And then so we'll go to the next question. How do you find the balance between work and life? Work-life balance, I guess.
Yikes. No, I'm just kidding. I think for me, a big part of finding a work-life balance was getting involved in clubs on campus. I knew off the bat that I do really well if I get outside and I exercise every day. And so that's kind of what drew me to rowing and to club sports at William & Mary. And that was something that was really important for me in terms of finding a work-life balance, because it was a scheduled time that I absolutely could not be doing work. And especially like now I would say I'm much better at making that time for myself, but having a club that told me this is when you're not working was really helpful for me transitioning to college.
And I think that's especially important to have that kind of scaffolding, because college is so different from high school in that, you'll only be in class for, well, some days, Mondays and Fridays, I don't have class. Wednesday, I have one class. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I have a lot of class. And so kind of being able to balance it in that way, I think that's where it's super helpful to have clubs and that's something, especially as a freshman living in a freshman dorm, and Caroline knows because she puts on these activities as an RA, but there are a lot of opportunities to have, your hall is going to have a study break, or your hall is going to go out to Lake Matoka and go canoeing, or you're just going to go on a walk down Dog Street and get, there's an ice cream place called Kilman's that students love to go. So apart from just having, I have a cappella rehearsal tonight or whatever, there's a lot of opportunities for that as well. Also, I think the fact that William & Mary is kind of situated around the Sunken Gardens gives the perfect opportunity to have breaks just in between classes. You'll walk through and people are playing spike ball and people have hammocks, and you kind of have that, I call it Camp William & Mary. So you kind of get that work-life balance kind of built in.
Nice. So next question. I know someone threw it in the chat. Has the Monroe program changed and hopefully bettered your experience at William & Mary?
I'll take this one first. I think, yes, absolutely. So one of the cool things about being a Monroe Scholar is that you can opt to live in Monroe Hall. And being kind of you become really good friends with who's in your freshman hall. And so I think being a Monroe Scholar and being in Monroe, I have so many really close friends from freshman year that I still talk to every day. I still hang out with every day, that have absolutely transformed my experience at the college. I have one friend who I met in my freshman hall, and our entire goal was to take a class together every semester that we went here. And we're now up to 10 classes together. So it's just kind of like fun, ridiculous things like that really kind of came out of the Monroe program because I got to live in that building. So it definitely changed it. I'm sure people in other freshman halls had similar experiences, but that I was in that one because I was a Monroe Scholar.
And I had a similar experience living in Monroe where, you're all sitting in your hall lounge and talking about your days, and the things people were getting involved in were just crazy. It would be like September of our freshman year, we were there for 2 weeks, and Amy living next to me is talking about how she's doing a research lab at the Global Research Institute, and she's preparing for her trip to the Dominican Republic. And it was just so cool being in that environment that was so intellectual, but so people were excited about their classes and about their research. And it was a great space to just be exposed to everything people are doing on campus, and just be exposed to people who I really admired, and I really just felt lucky that I got to live with them.
So I actually didn't live in Monroe Hall. There was just like some overflow, and I had like said on the preference sheet that I wanted a smaller hall. So I ended up not living in Monroe Hall, but I still felt like kind of the same community that Caroline and Mary have been talking about. It's like this group of like-minded people. And definitely I still have felt like that, like I'm a part of the community of Monroe Scholars. And there also are like perks to being a Monroe Scholar. Like you get The research funding that we were talking about, you get to register early, I think for your first year, for your first semester of registration. There are certain like lecture series and like certain events that are put on only for Monroe scholars. So yeah, short answer, yes.
Ice cream socials and other social events like that too.
Well, that's a great segue to the next question. So the next question, is there a social component to the Monroe program? How often do you see other people involved in the program? Which I know y'all pretty much answered, but if you have anything to add to it, that'd be great.
So I was actually just talking. I'm training for a big bike ride right now with one of my friends, and we were biking this morning. We were training, and we were talking about just remembering the first time we met, and it was at a Monroe ice cream social, and we were talking about what we wanted to do with our Monroe projects, and we were like, I don't even know, where do we begin? And we were standing outside Monroe Hall, you know, with the little ice cream truck, and it was just such an awesome bonding moment. We were talking about all the cool things we want to explore and the great professors we had been talking to, and that, you know, 4 years later, we're still very, very close friends, which I think is really cool. And I think that friendship was kind of facilitated through, you know, I saw her at that ice cream social, and then I saw her the next week at one of the lectures, and kind of having that community and the shared experience of doing the Monroe Research Project.
Awesome. Yeah. So the next question, unless someone wants to add, hopefully not cutting anyone off. Do you do research on or off campus? So I guess you can kind of go through how that process looks for research.
So yeah, like I think I said before, research can look like so different depending on what discipline you're doing it in, the type of project that you're doing it in, or the type of project that you want to do. So you definitely can do research on campus. That I think is most common if you're a part of like a STEM lab or something like that. Like there's a reason for you to be on campus. So in that case, it's just part of the application. Like you just like it will just ask like, do you want or do you need to be on campus to do your research essentially? And then you just say yes. And then if your project gets approved, then you get to like you're allowed to be on campus over the summer. Like they will house you over the summer. And that's not happening this summer because of COVID, but typically that's the way that it works. So it's like built into their research funding, if that makes sense.
I think also, if we're just like broadly talking about research opportunities we've had, so my most recent research opportunity this past summer, I worked as a research assistant for a lab up at Harvard Business School, and I was working on the future of work, so like labor economics, and I got into that topic through my William and Mary professors and was kind of encouraged to reach out to them and apply for this program because I was studying abroad last year, and there was one labor economics professor at William and Mary who, you know, even though we were halfway across the world, he was so supportive, and he would send me, you know, articles, and he would find times for us to catch up and talk about, you know, what I was learning in the UK, what he was teaching here. And then when I decided, you know, I wanted to keep researching it, he was just so supportive and so helpful. So even though my research there had nothing to do with William and Mary's campus and William and Mary's research, it was so nice to know that I had a whole team of professors and my peers who were kind of supporting me and there for me as I did my research up there.
Yeah, so research for me has taken a couple different forms while I've been here. So my freshman year through my sophomore year, I worked at a research lab called Transparent Development Footprints over at the Global Research Institute. And so that was something that's really advertised to William and Mary students because it's through William and Mary. And so basically I served as a research assistant for that, and that was something I like applied for and then eventually was paid for, which is awesome. So even paid research is an opportunity here. And then my other research projects have really been through the Project on International Peace and Security, which is a research lab through our IR department, International Relations. And so that was really cool because I kind of got guided by professors, but had my own project that I then got to present to experts in the field and things like that, while also kind of having that safety bubble of a William and Mary professor who really cares about my research and really wants me to succeed and that kind of thing. So those are just like two opportunities that out of like hundreds that you can get involved in as far as research goes, even just on campus, if that's where you want to stay.
And some of them you don't even necessarily have to ask for. Like my sophomore year, I had a professor reach out to me who I had taken his class freshman year, loved it, and I really got to know him pretty well. And he emailed me and he was like, hey, I just got some research money to create this new team. Any chance you want to join? Any chance you want to join me in this and work as my research assistant? And that was so cool. As a sophomore, I think that's something that, as a Monroe scholar, he knew that I had that experience with research from my Monroe money, from the summer after freshman year, and yeah, I got to work with him, which was awesome.
Yeah, and just kind of if you're wondering what the broad scope of different research is happening on our campus, I just sent a link in the chat for our research month. This is a research month at William Mary, so you can kind of see the ton of different types of research projects that are happening across our campus. So the next question, if you choose to live in Monroe Hall, will you generally be assigned a roommate / how does the process with that work?
I can go here because I can also bring the res life perspective of this. So generally the way roommate selection works for freshmen, and actually my sister just went through this because she's also a freshman here, she followed me. But basically you have this kind of housing portal that you work through during the summer, and you'll all be emailed about this extensively. But basically you have the opportunity to either be assigned a random roommate or to kind of tell Res Life who you want to live with. So I know at least our year, I'm sure they're doing it for you guys too. There was a Facebook group that was made and people kind of posted in their habits on like, I'm a pretty clean person, I'm a messy person, I like to go to bed early or late, all of those different things, and like kind of your interests. You can find someone who's really similar, or you can find someone who, is completely different from you and learn to live with that too. And then people have also had phenomenal success with random roommates as well. So there's really, you can kind of make that your own. I also know that there are ways for you to specify to Res Life if you need accommodations, like maybe you need a single room for whatever through student accessibility services, and that's also completely an option. I couldn't speak as to how many of those are available in Monroe specifically, but it is a thing.
Yeah. So next question, what are the benefits of opting to living in Monroe Hall specifically? And I guess we could include Tolliver because that's also another hall.
Well, so aside from, and we've already talked about, the wonderful community and all, but let me tell you, the location is just so nice. Monroe Hall is right next to everything you could need. It's really close to Colonial Williamsburg. So, if you want to go get coffee or ice cream or Wawa, yes, we're a big fan of Wawa at William Mary. Best place to get any study break. But it's also so close to the academic buildings. The joke was my freshman fall, I had a language class. So it was 8 a.m. 5 days a week, and I am not a morning person. And it was always a joke to see how late I could leave Monroe and still be on time. And I finally got it down to I could leave Monroe at 7:57 and be in the classroom by 8. Because it was just such a central location. You walk out the front door of Monroe and the whole campus is right there, which is awesome.
Nice. Yeah. And Tolliver is also, I would say, like pretty central too. Maybe not, and a little bit smaller if you're looking for a little bit smaller environment. But yeah, I've heard great things for both. So next question, is the enrichment / speaker series often utilized? What is the experience like? Informal or formal, informational, kind of how does that look?
Yeah, so I went to a bunch of these sorry, Holly, were you going?
No, you go.
I went to a bunch of them my freshman year and really loved them because it was a really great chance for me to kind of listen to speakers that were completely out of context of the classes I was taking. I could go to a lecture on some journalism topic, which is completely not related to what I was learning about in class. And so that was a really kind of awesome experience. I would say it was pretty casual. It wasn't like something that you had to get like business casual for or anything. So it was really just like going right from class to a lecture series. And then I would grab lunch with whoever I went with the lecture series to. So it was, yeah, that was a great talk, Mary. It was fun. So yeah, it's pretty commonly utilized, especially by underclassmen. As you can see, Mary and I both went to the same one. So
It's been put on pause for a while though. That's why I was like struggling to think of the last one I went to, but they haven't been doing it, I think, for the past like 2 semesters, obviously, given just the situation. But
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it makes sense because of the COVID. So hopefully that'll change for the fall. So that's the hope. So next question, how difficult is it to find an opportunity to study abroad?
Not difficult at all. William and Mary is so excited to have students study abroad. It almost is presented as like, and which study abroad will you be doing? Not necessarily like, if you want to study abroad, we could maybe make it work. So I studied abroad at Oxford my junior spring, so I guess last year, right when COVID struck. And it was really very easy to do. And I actually didn't go through a William and Mary program, but the study abroad office was so helpful in arranging every step of the way before I got there. And then when I got there, I know I mentioned I had that econ professor who was supporting me the whole time, but I still really felt William and Mary's presence while I was there. I had professors who, knew contacts at Oxford, and so they set us up for coffee, and it was nice to feel that support from halfway across the world. And then when COVID came and we all had to leave early, the Reed Center was wonderfully helpful in, helping us out with flights and everything we needed.
Yeah, so I did do a William and Mary program, and I actually did our William and Mary summer program. So the summer after my sophomore year, I studied abroad in Cape Town, South Africa. I needed an arts requirement, so I signed up for their modern dance program, which is something I had no experience in, and it was phenomenal. I loved it, and the one like Mary said, the study abroad office made it so easy to kind of figure out, to talk to people about their experiences, to find people who had been on that exact same trip before so I could talk to them about it. And what was really nice for me actually is I was able to get funding partially for it. So they helped subsidize the costs of study abroad. So they really want to make this accessible to you. And that was something that really made that kind of a possibility for me. And so that was absolutely phenomenal. And the reason I actually chose a summer study abroad too is like, I love being at William and Mary so much. I didn't want to give up a whole semester of being on campus. So if you're like that, there's summer opportunities, winter opportunities, spring break opportunities for study abroad. Yeah, like Mary said, it's almost, where are you going to go? Not, are you going to go?
Yeah, like I said, I actually didn't study abroad, so it feels weird to even have anything to say about this, but I did still feel like there was so much support from the Reeves Center, and specifically like it can be hard to study abroad in STEM. Like you definitely could do it like Caroline did to fulfill like a different graduation requirement, but it's sometimes harder to find a way to still do that, if especially if you're in like a really rigorous STEM major like neuroscience. But I felt a lot of support like from the Reeves Center for that, and there are so many different options. And like Caroline said, like it's possible to get it partially funded, and like they just really want to make it work with your schedule. And yeah, I mean, with your needs, what you want to do, like what will work for you. And just so many people do it. Like it's kind of crazy like how prevalent it is. Like that was something that they talked about so much when I was touring here, but like even just like if you go up to like 10 people, I would say like 8 of them have like studied abroad somewhere. It's kind of crazy, but super awesome that William and Mary has so much support around that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's just a ton of people who are able to study abroad, and I mean, just exactly what you all said. So next question, other than the research stipend, are there any academic benefits to being a Monroe Scholar? Do you have any classes or research for scholars only, first pick of classes, etc.?
So I believe when you're registering as a fall freshman, there's like one class that you can register early for a little bit. That might have changed. Other than that, I don't think there are any classes specifically that are only for Monroe Scholars that I'm aware of.
Yeah, Caroline, I'm not sure if this is what you were saying, but the very first registration you do, you get an earlier time slot than the rest of the freshman class. So you have that little advantage. Yeah.
That is only for the first registration.
But it really is helpful if you have your eye on like a certain class. You're like, I really want to get a spot in this one. You get to register before all the other incoming freshmen. So you have a much better chance of getting in.
And then also for research, apart from any independent research that you might choose to do with your freshman stipend or with your full Monroe money, there's a listserv for Monroe scholars that Dan Crystal, professor at William and Mary, uses maybe once a week, and he'll send out opportunities for research opportunities or interesting talks on campus that will go to all Monroe scholars. So kind of having that central hub. And I've learned about a lot of research opportunities there. And they'll have some things on, certain study abroad programs that they think Monroe scholars would be particularly interested in, or certain lectures on campus. And so it's nice to know that, we have that email coming with all the information you could ever want.
Oh, and I forgot to mention the link I threw in the chat it's a great kind of search method of finding all the different study abroad programs that we have at William and Mary. So it looks like we've went through all the questions. So we can give it a minute or so to see if anyone's typing any more questions. If there's anything that you all want to add to your experience that you want to feel like is just useful information through this process, I think this would be a great opportunity while we wait to see if any other questions pop up.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, if people have questions, they don't have to be just about the Monroe process. If you have any questions about college, or I have a brother who's a senior in high school right now, and he's making his decision, and I know there's so many things to consider. So if there's any way we could help, just with any of your questions about college, we'd be really happy to.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, we got one. Do students attend sports events at William and Mary?
I personally haven't, but I think that speaks just more to me as a person because I don't really like sporting events. But there definitely are like events that people attend and go to. I think like the football games are pretty big ones, and there have been like maybe basketball games. Actually, I shouldn't be talking about this because I haven't.
So I think it's something that it is what you make of it. So I think some people go to every single game, and some people like Holly have never been to a game. So I would put myself somewhere in the middle. In pre-COVID times, there would be a lot of fun, like a tailgate before football games. There would be a Monroe tailgate, Monroe Scholars tailgates, and club sports teams will have them. And then also, I think just having, big games that I don't know what it's called, like the pep club or something will really incentivize attendance at games. So they'll have t-shirts or they'll have whatever. I think one thing that's also really cool about going to a smaller school is that you don't have, the athletes and then everyone else. And so, in your econ class or your chem class or whatever, your lab mate is on the football team. And so I think having friends who are on these D1 sports and going out to support them is really cool. So I was at a track meet last weekend because my best friend is on the team. And, there were so many students there just supporting our friends, which is maybe a different kind of side of college sports, but a fun one nonetheless.
Yeah, I would say it's like Mary, I'm somewhere in the middle. A big thing about the football games. So for the homecoming game, something that I personally think is awesome, we don't have a marching band here. So the halftime show they brought, I think this is like a yearly thing because it's happened more than once now. They bring in really like cool dogs that do a bunch of really fun tricks, and it's just very kind of random, but it's really fun. And then I also like really loved going to the basketball games. Like that was really fun, and they especially like they have like a Gold Rush game, and like they give out a bunch of free t-shirts, and it's a fun time. President Rowe comes, and then that becomes a whole drama thing. It's awesome.
And our team is not bad. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So next question, what did a typical day of summer research look like for you?
So for the first year project, which is the one that I did, it's like I said, it's $1,000 for 3 like full-time weeks, but you can spread that out over the entire summer. It just has to be the time, like the hour equivalent of like 3 weeks, if that makes sense. So I mean, and also because mine was an independent one, it really was not very structured at all. Like I would just kind of like anytime I felt like sitting down and like doing some work, I would just work for a couple hours like every other day, like throughout the entire summer. And like that was like the equivalent of 3 weeks. So it can be like a very chill thing, I would say, especially if you're doing the first year grant and it's something like that, because you have the entire summer to do it, but it's only 3 weeks, if that makes sense, of research time.
And my experience was pretty similar to that. It was maybe a little more structured because I was interviewing a lot of people that my professor kind of helped set me up with. So it was a lot of driving to interviews and interviewing people. But some people, like I know one of my good friends from my freshman hall was working in a biology lab on campus, and so that was very for those 3 weeks it was 9 to 5 working in the lab. And kind of that more structured, what you would expect, I guess. And I don't think that's just for STEM. I know some people did that in economics. They stayed on campus and they would meet with their professor for just kind of a full day of work for those few weeks.
Yeah. So next question. How would you describe a typical Monroe scholar?
So I floated this term in the chat earlier. It's called a TWOMP, and it means a typical William and Mary person. And I think that a typical Monroe scholar is just a little bit more TWOMPy than perhaps the average TWOMP, which is getting very in the weeds here. But really, they're just so incredibly passionate about what they're interested in. And also supportive of other people's passions. Like I know one of my really close friends is very into colonial architecture. I do not like colonial architecture, but I love listening to her talk about it because she's so excited about it. She's so passionate about it. And when we're walking through CW and we're passing all these houses and she's telling me what's wrong with them, I love to hear about it, and she then loves to hear about, what I'm working on in kind of like national security strategy, like research. So it's very both supportive of other people's passions and very passionate about your thing specifically.
And I think that really comes out at the research symposium. So after you do research, whether it's just the freshman project or the full project, they have this big poster presentation where everyone makes a poster and you all go in. Mine was in swim library my year, or it'll be in some auditorium, and you get your little table, you put your poster up, and then people walk around. And I thought it was so cool how we had to stand there and present for one shift, and then there were a few other shifts throughout the day, and it was packed. Like Monroe scholars would come and they would present their poster, and then they would stay so they could see all of their peers' projects, which felt so nice. You're standing there presenting, and it was just a steady stream of my friends and then people who I didn't know, who, maybe they were a Monroe scholar who lived on the 3rd floor and I lived on the 1st floor, or and just having that community of people who, are passionate about their work, but really, really want to support you and see what you're interested in.
I completely agree with everything that Caroline and Mary said. To say it succinctly, I would say academically oriented, but in a fun way, and then also a little kooky, I don't know, a little fun.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So next question, is there any divide between in-state and out-of-state students?
No. So many of I'm an in-state student, and so many of my very close friends are out-of-state students, and it just means that over breaks I do a lot of traveling. So I drive to New Jersey about once a break.
Yeah, my freshman roommate was from Vermont, and then my next roommate was from Las Vegas, and now my 2 housemates, one's from Chicago and one's from Boston.
Yeah, I figured that'd be an easy one. Next question, is Greek life super prevalent, or does it not play a big role in social life?
Yeah, so I got involved with Greek life my freshman year, and it was definitely something that was wonderful. It was a great plus. It was a great community, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's something take it or leave it. So I would say half of my friends, or maybe more, aren't in Greek life at all. Some of them are in Greek life, but different sororities. I think it's something that is a nice addition for some people, and it was a great community that I could kind of add on to my array of different communities I got to join. But it's by no means, like your definition of what you do and who you interact with, kind of how you shape your college community. It's really just a cherry on top for some people. For some people, it's not.
Yeah, I think like what Mary said about sporting events, it's kind of like what you make of it in a way. Like it doesn't need to be super prevalent, but like there's a lot of fun stuff that the fraternities and sororities do on campus. Like they'll put on I think it's a frat that does it, but it's like a petting zoo where they'll bring in like little animals to the Crimsdale Meadow, and you can just go and like pet the little baby like sheep. It's just very cute. So yeah, I mean, even if you don't like join Greek life, you can still partake in like the activities that they put on, which are super fun. Yeah, but I have also heard great things about it from my friends that are in a fraternity and sorority. So
Yeah, I'd say just kind of echoing what they were talking about. I'm not in Greek life, but 3 out of my 4 closest friends are, and they are obviously hanging out with me a lot. So it's not like they're just seeing other people in Greek life. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you're wondering statistics wise, it's about 30% of students are involved in fraternity and sorority life. So it's I always tell people you can basically what you said, you can make of it what you want. With a lot of students, about one third of the students being involved in it, but about 2/3 not being involved in it. So there's no pressure that you feel like you have to join a certain organization, whether it be Greek life or not. They feel like you have to be really in the in crowd or anything like that. So you definitely don't get that feeling from what I've seen, and the students are agreeing with me. So that's great with that. So next question, is the Monroe program isolating at all?
Not at all. So I lived in Monroe Hall, and my roommate wasn't actually a Monroe scholar. And that's something where I met her on the Facebook page, and we just really clicked. And we were talking about, where we wanted to live, and I really wanted to live in Monroe. But we were like, well, what do we do? And William Mary lets you, if you're a Monroe scholar, you want to live in Monroe, and you have a non-Monroe roommate you want to pull, you can bring them on in. And so my friend who just popped her head in the door actually lived right next to me freshman year in Monroe, and she's not a Monroe scholar, but her roommate was, and she kind of got pulled in. And so I wouldn't say it's isolating at all. Again, just another community you get to join, but by no means your main community.
Yeah, so I mean that pretty much answers it. So that's all the questions that we have right now that are open for the Q&A. So we'll give it another minute to see if anyone's typing any questions. But thank you all so much for attending, and I just wanted to thank the panelists for joining us and giving your wonderful perspective. And so we'll give it a little bit of time, just maybe a minute, to see if anyone has any more questions. But if y'all had any other thing you wanted, any other ideas or experiences you've had as a student at William Mary, they feel like would help these students figure things out, that'd be great. If you don't, that's fine too.
I think one of the things I'm most grateful for at William & Mary is it's given me a very safe place to take risks. I came in and I had no idea what I wanted to study, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think the way William & Mary is designed, being a liberal arts college, but also just being a very supportive college, means that I got to take such a wide range of classes and just kind of figure it out and feel really supported as I made that decision figuring it out. And I'm someone who being close to professors was really important to me. And I've really gotten that. I have professors who I've standing coffee with one of them, even through quarantine. Every Monday we get coffee, and I've had professors who, invite me over for dinner to their house, or, you can walk their dog, and I think just having that safe place and kind of that family feel, we say one tribe, one family, but we really mean it. And so feeling like you can take risks and you can come into college not really knowing what you want to do or what you want to get out of it, and be supported no matter what, is really special. And I think that's what makes William & Mary a family, and what makes it, like I said, such a happy, safe space.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't have put it any better. We have a question that popped up. What does a typical weekend look like? And do people often do things in Williamsburg or stay on campus?
I am very passionate about the farmers market. So once a week, every Saturday, there's a farmers market over on Dog Street. So that's usually how we start our weekends. I say so many people don't go because it can be kind of early, but it's really fun. And so they have like a bunch of local vendors. There's a local kombucha place who I don't have it readily accessible, but I have a refillable bottle from them that I go and I fill up my kombucha. Yep, Holly too. And Mary, see, very great. And so yeah, that's normally how it starts. And then normally it's kind of, you mix it up from grinding on homework to, doing what Mary said and hanging out in the sunken gardens for a while. Or like, I know a little bit ago, I did a bike ride with a friend over to College Creek. One weekend I did a bike ride to Richmond. I would say most of the time people are staying on campus just because we like to be here. But there are opportunities to kind of get away if you need that too.
I spend a lot of time, Caroline mentioned College Creek, and that's a beach that's really, really close to campus. I probably go to College Creek maybe twice a week. We'll do dinner there, we'll watch the sunset there, we will, just bring our work there and just kind of sit at the beach and do our readings. And if we can't get to College Creek, it's a little bit, you can bike there or you can, drive or Uber. It's maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. I go to Lake Matoka a lot, and they have free rentals for kayaks and canoes. So I try to get out on the lake quite a bit. And they also have, one of my favorite things is when the weather is nice, there's a big amphitheater that overlooks Lake Matoka, and they have all kinds of classes. They have, spin classes and yoga classes. And so I would say my weekends are mostly spent outside. And then in the winter, there's a big ice skating rink that this year it was free for students most days. So I would say most of my weekends are spent outside at some kind of event, which is great. And even during COVID times, I feel lucky that my weekends are still packed, which is great. And then also doing homework because,
Yeah, I would just echo everything that Mary and Caroline said. There's so many beautiful places on campus. I feel like I find more spots every single month that are just really nice, little study spaces or just spaces to hang out, have picnics. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I have definitely taken a couple weekend trips to Richmond. So that's also totally an option. If you have a car, somebody with a car, you can make a fun day trip somewhere fun. But yeah, I usually end up just staying on campus, like these other two gals said.
And there's a group, William & Mary AMP, Alma Mater Productions, and they put on events probably every single day. So every Thursday there's a homebrew, so it's it's like a little concert. So people will sing, really well attended. And then, they bring in comedians, they have just really cool events. They'll host, they had a disco rollerblading rink that they set up inside Sadler. And so every Friday, Saturday night, there's something that AMP is hosting, which is fun.
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I am the former graduate advisor for AMP. So for 2 years, I helped advise AMP and put on a lot of different events. I had a lot of fun on the weekends and evenings. So yeah, and that's available to the whole student population. You don't have to be involved in anything in particular to join any one of those events. So I appreciate that shout out.
Yeah, well, like Caroline, I saw she put this in the chat. AMP also hosts big concerts. I think it's every semester. And they bring in awesome. My freshman year, they had, was it DNCE, the Joe Jonas Band. We had Dram. We had Ray Strumman.
Their wives.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
it's really,
concert.
Yeah,
it's great. And the concerts are maybe $5 for tickets, which is great.
Yeah.
Also, other things fun to do. I'm just going to pitch my favorite frozen custard place that's within walking distance of campus. So you can go to Meadows, which is just amazing. There are so many places to get ice cream.
Have you tried their milkshakes?
I haven't because I'm so partial to the frozen custard.
I mean, the lavender custard is to die for. The lavender is the best, hands down. But you have to try out their milkshakes, but also share it with someone because it's a lot in the milkshake, but it's amazing.
Okay.
What is this place called again?
It's called Meadows Frozen Custard.
Meadows.
It's right up by the Domino's in the Cadova.
Wow. Okay, I will have to check this out. That
Best
sounds
custard
awesome.
ever. Yeah, they don't always have certain flavors, but when they have the lavender, it's amazing and so refreshing. Sorry.
They have an Instagram that has their schedule of flavors for the month because they change every day. So for your viewers, screenshot the calendar at the beginning of the month like me and save it in your favorites.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's just something that my wife and I, we just absolutely love and we keep track of. Yeah, so I think
I'm wondering if there aren't any more questions, I'd be happy. I could drop my email in the chat if anybody thinks of a question and wants to ask. later on.
Yeah, sure. And make sure if you drop it in the chat, I know most of y'all have done this, but make sure you include the attendees because the default is not including attendees, which is kind of annoying for Zoom, but that's just how they do it. But yeah.
I'm just realizing every single thing that I've sent in the chat for the whole time has just gone to the panelists.
No.
I'm so sorry. We've been
they were so
sending things
good.
thinking it's going to everyone. Oh, that's really too bad. Well.
Well, yeah. So yeah, if you want to throw the emails, which is perfect, I see it right there. If y'all have any questions after this that you think of later or that you have now, and you just want to email someone in particular, feel free to go for it. Yeah, it looks like the questions are all done. So if you just feel free to join us for any of the other sessions for the rest of the week. Our last day for our days for admitted students will be on Saturday with department chats. So feel free to show up for that if you have any particular department that you want to chat with the professor or department head or something like that. Again, thank you so much for joining us. For the panelists, for the attendees, I really appreciate it. Congratulations on getting admitted. That is absolutely amazing. It was very competitive this year. We had over 23% more applicants. We broke a record. We've never had more than 15,000 applications, and we had 17,000 applications this year. So it is amazing that you all got admitted. Congratulations. And we hope to see you all in the fall. And I'm going to do an awkward hand waving to say goodbye. And I hope everyone has a good evening. So I'll see y'all later.